Welcome, and thank you for doing this. It's been a while since I've talked to you, so let's get on with it and give us an idea, Jimmy, what you're doing, or maybe Nicole, you want to do a little intro.
Wait. Okay, I just gave Jimmy permission to record.
Yeah, let me get permission too.
Yep, now you have it.
Yeah, let's make sure we're recording.
Jimmy, do I need to make you host as well? So
Yes.
Now, if I switch you to host, or can I just do it co-host? Because did you want me to go live? That's what I was going to ask you. Did you want me to go live to YouTube, or do you just want me to us to post it following? Because we can do either.
Yeah, I think we can do live and post it after. Yeah, that'll be good.
So Grant, if I send it live to my YouTube, can you turn around and send it to your Facebook? And then if we get any kind of audio, I'll just watch. Or
I can do that, and I can talk to Desta. I haven't been able to get a hold of her, but I can get her to see if she can put it up right away on my YouTube channel. But
right, if she
that may not be able to happen. Maybe I'll just do Facebook for now.
Right, and that's what I mean. If you just share it to Facebook, we should at least get a room a little bit. Since
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you're recording, I'm recording. How do I go live? Is that under the more?
It doesn't show your recording.
Oh, I'm not yet.
There you go. I saved you that time.
You had the backup. We're good.
Okay, now you're recording.
And now how do I go live? That's under more.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody's going to be surprised.
There you go. So you're live on your YouTube?
We're getting there. And then as soon as I have a link, I'll send it to your, can I send it to your Facebook, or do you want me to email it to you?
Email it to me. Yeah.
Okay. And then I know this is just so much fun, so I'm going to kill my camera while I do that. If you guys want to start or maybe catch up a little bit, that'll give us time to link it all up.
Yeah. So you've been busy, Jimmy, right here.
Yes, a lot happening here. I think last time we had an update was back in April or something.
Yeah.
And there's been an amazing amount of development since, and it's still ongoing. I mean, even as of 3-4 days ago, there's new new things, you know. And so I will present what I have so far. I have I think 100 slides, but maybe more 60 slides that we can go through.
Okay.
And I have a few video clips also. I try to to make it as concrete as possible, because sometimes some of these concepts can be abstracts, and so I prep slides with pictures and everything to try to help follow the flow of what we're going to go through.
Yep. Okay.
Right. So let me bring up the slides here. There you go. And share my screen. I think, Nicole, you need to allow me to share my screen. It says that
Nope.
It's disabled right now.
I knew I had one more thing to do, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got a lot to do here. It's not that simple, I know. Okay, so here we go, and I will also share sound when it is needed. Okay, do you see my slides?
Hang on.
Yes, I do.
And let me make it full screen. Okay. All right, you see the slides? Grant, you're good? I think you're muted both, and I don't see you.
Yep, we see him. I see him.
All right.
Here's my favorite right there in the middle. I was actually just talking about this one last night, Jimmy. I think in our last update, I discussed Ryan Graves seeing a craft like this. And then, yeah, it came up again last night in a great little 3 o'clock in the morning discussion. So there you go. It's all connected.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jimmy.
All right, Grant, you're on mute, just so you know, in case you don't know. All right, so today I have a lot of material, and as I said, we'll try to make it as understandable as possible. Some of these concepts, maybe a bit mathematical, if you will, but I got good slides and good pictures. And so the title of this presentation is a new solution explaining the holographic universe and its connection to our consciousness. So I'll be introducing a formula very shortly here. I'm very excited about presenting, and it's all connected to what we've been through over the last several presentations in the past. And so you'll see what I mean by that in a few minutes here. So on the agenda, we'll cover a bit how it all started, just a brief recap on how it started and the contact modality that I've been using here for over 5 years, 5 years and a half now. A brief update on the golden ratio triangular craft also, which has manifested over 4 times already, and the last time was upon invitation. So I do have a nice footage of that. So I will present that shortly. And there's quite major development in this respect, because this connects to what I call the universal formula here that I will be introducing, which based on all my research is really the formula that's driving the holographic universe that we live in, and the what I like to call light encoded reality matrix we're in. This connects interestingly to the Rendlesham enigma. So we'll go through that. There are some significant developments, and as Nicole and Grant knows, you put me in touch with our good friends Gary Osborne, and so I've been in close touch with him. We've been exchanging information and so on, and so a lot of very exciting development there in this respect. And this also touched even the Skinwalker range and this mysterious 1.6 gigahertz also signal that's been they've been talking a lot over the last episode. So we'll cover all that and more. And so let's just get started here. So really, just for those who may be less familiar with the work that I've been doing, I have been broadcasting throughout the solar system using my radio station and homemade antenna array now for over 4.5 years. And primarily, when I started doing this, I was broadcasting on frequency 144.1 megahertz. And we went through this in past updates. And of course, I've been continuing doing that. And maybe 3.5 years ago, I discovered that, and we see it at the bottom of that slide here. I was drawn or inspired to multiply this frequency by the speed of light, right, in kilometer per second in the metric unit. And when I did that 3.5 years ago, I was stunned to see that the result of that calculation was giving exactly 43,200.0. I mean, to the dot. And at the time, I knew, what are the statistical probability of that being just an accident was infinitely small, obviously. And so I knew there was something there that I needed to dig into. And, upon looking on the internet, and we showed that again in the last update, that number, this 43,200, is the scaling factor of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And obviously this famous harmonic 432, which is all over the place in nature and especially in the pyramid, is very significant. And so that's why about maybe 1.5 years ago, I built 2 additional antennas that will resonate with 432 megahertz and set up essentially or expanded my radio station so I could cover these 2 bands, if you will, this 144 and 432 megahertz with high power. And so this is the setup that I have here in Arizona right now. The 2 antennas are on the extremities, or the 144 to cover the 144 megahertz, and this I can deploy about 150,000 watt of this setup, and the the setup for 432 megahertz, which is rather new. As I said, it's relatively new. This one I can deploy about 250,000 watts. So at this power, obviously, the radio waves will physically reach every corner of our solar system and go far beyond. Now, so let me branch into this golden ratio triangular craft here. I had mentioned in the last update that this craft had manifested already 3 times, and there was something very unique about this craft, right? Is that the sides, by doing a model of this, and these are all the screenshots of the manifestations. So by dividing essentially any side of this triangular craft by any other side, and we see here, for instance, just to make it concrete, if we take the side C, this is a relative measurement that I made here, right? By dividing the side C, for instance, by side B, this is expressed here, I was, getting the golden ratio. And this was first noticed actually by my friend David Sarita when we had the initial sighting several months ago. But this graph came back several times since, and I realized that when I was, again, dividing any side of this triangle by any other side, let's say even, for instance, side B divided by side A here, what we see also gives the golden ratio. And incredibly, dividing this long segment, the slide C, by the smallest one, the slide A, we're getting the golden ratio squared. So this was very astonishing to me, and I knew this was not an accident, right? The odds of that being just a coincidence or just infinitely small. And so there was something behind this very profound. And so
can I just interject
yes.
for 1 second now?
Sure.
I know it's a little bit of a catch up, and I don't know if you're going to play a video clip, which I have seen videos that you take while you do this. Now that craft that you're talking about, I love this craft. When it appeared, and you see it take this shape, like it kind of moves in the sky or it blinks into this. And that's how you can kind of see that it is this object that it almost like, it looks like it's one shape and then it might even go flat. How, Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, the positioning, well, the positioning itself is interesting because for this craft or this shape to appear in a golden ratio proportion, it has to be in the proper angle from my perspective, right? Because the craft could be from behind and I could see, there are many ways that this craft will not display this golden ratio proportion, if you will. It's not what happens. So this craft is kind of purposely posing and just, appearing, materializing in and out of our dimension very rapidly. In the proper angle. And briefly, just, we're talking about the golden ratio. Why is it important? The golden ratio is one of the key driving force in our universe. One of the key driving principle, right? From the counter rotating field of the pine cone to the Nautilus shell to how hurricanes are evolving in terms of the dynamics. To galaxies, how galaxies are essentially forming a hurricane and so on, even in the proportion of our body, our DNA and cells, and I have a few slides a bit later, the golden ratio is a key driving force, a key driving principle. And it's obviously highly mathematical. There's a lot of mathematics behind it. I will not go through it too much in detail here, but it is a very important it's a very important principle, and it's obviously also all over in the pyramid and so on. So golden ratio is a key. So this is again here another expression of this graph. This sightings was this sighting, what the days of this one we had, this one was on December 5th. This was the first sighting actually, and we see here again the same proportion. And, by doing this little math here, dividing any side of this triangle by another side, we consistently get the golden ratio or golden ratio squared. So I have a short video I'd like to show. Essentially, this is, so what I did after the third manifestation, I created an invitation message for this craft to manifest. And also in that message, I included the golden ratio proportions that they were communicating to me. So in a sense, I was kind of sending back my homework to them, if you will, to tell them, hey, I figured it out, just send me more, right?
Yeah.
So that's a bit the type of relationship that's been ongoing for a while now. So so if you don't mind, let me just play the short clip here, and we'll show the transmission and what unfolded next. So let me just open this up.
Get ready to go. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. And if you don't hear the sound, let me know at the beginning, but the sound should play well. So here we go. All right.
Wow.
So let's
That
get
is
back.
impressive.
Yeah, this was a shock to me too, in the sense that, I was, we always hope, but don't expect, I tried always to keep my expectation low. So yeah, let me bring up the slide again here. All right.
One question for you. You mentioned there was a homemade antenna. How long did it take you to make this antenna?
It's a thing that I do over time. It's the building the antenna itself, when I have all the ingredients, all the material, takes a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's just to assemble. I take my time to take assemble, make calculations, and I have a specialized software to model these antennas, so you know, they have to be very precise and made in a very precise way, and so on. And so, yeah, but then once I have all the ingredients, the materials, couple of these, lovely. Okay, so, there's been so related to this craft and this golden ratio triangular craft. So there's been a major development, I'll say what was 5 days ago. And again, I was in touch with friends Gary Osborne on this. So let me show you here. So I had noticed that there was more than the golden ratio proportions to this triangle. And so I ended up going online and finding a good program, an application to create triangles, right? To model a specialized program to model triangles. And so I was trying to find exactly what they were trying to communicate through this golden ratio triangular craft, because clearly there seemed to be more to it than that. And so I ended up modeling this craft based on the measurements I had and some of the angles that I had found that were very close to 432, for instance, and so on. And I plugged that in. And so to create it, I assigned this side here that we see here. I assigned this length, this relative length, as being 144, because I know, right, this harmonic is very critical. So I arbitrarily assigned essentially this length to be 144, plug the angles that I noticed, and essentially by playing with it a little bit, I figured out what they were trying to communicate for this manifestation. And what came out was absolutely mind-blowing to me. And let me walk you through it here, exactly what that is. So this shape precisely and these angles, so not only, as I said, not only by dividing any side of this triangle by any other sides, we get the golden ratio, but even the angles, if you look at this angle A to the left side here, this angle is, you know, once again, the triangle is perfected, if you will. This angle is 4.32 degrees. Again, this is related to this harmonic 432, right?
Yeah.
The other angle here we see on the right side is 6.944 degree, which is exactly the reciprocal of 144.
Wow.
This is the inverse of the harmonic 144. And let me just pull out my calculator machine here so I can show some of it, right? You see here, if I take 1 divided by 144, oops, let me close this. 1 divided by 144, we get 6.94. You see, 6.9944. So this is exactly that angle that we see here.
Yeah.
And if we look at this other angle here, this other angle was positing me this 168 degrees, 168.736. But I figured out a day later that, you know, again, the sum of the angle in a triangle always adds up to 180 degrees. So if we just subtract that from that angle and we divide by this 432, we get the golden ratio squared again.
Wow.
And again, and now by assigning this side A as being this harmonic 144, automatically with these angles, this other side B here has to be 144 divided by the golden ratio. And finally, the side C relatively is equivalent to the harmonic 144 times golden ratio. So everything about this triangle that we see here, and this little table to the left here shows essentially all these relationships that we just described, and the percent match with, you know, accuracy in terms of the being perfectly right on the dot. It was quite stunning to me. Even the height also, if you look, this little height of this triangle here is 432 divided by 4, and the semi-perimeter, if you calculate it, it also adds up to this harmonic 144 times golden ratio. Now, you may recall in the last update what we went through, right? When I presented this work about the Earth grid and how the Earth grid itself, the lattice of the Earth grid, based on all the location of these ancient sacred sites, the location based on this calculation was suggesting that the Earth grid lattice were based on this harmonic 144 times golden ratio here. And this wasn't.
Jimmy, let me jump in real quick. Grant, this is when I was in Wisconsin a month ago. That location there lines up with this Earth grid. and Jimmy broadcasted for us. But of course, in true form, when you get together and it's been hours of getting together, when does our transmission come through? Which it was an hour after Jimmy had sent it, but it was right when we were packing up our gear, throwing it all back in the car. The camera was down, and then the radio started going. So yeah. So
that was what happened. Can
yeah.
you explain exactly what happened? Was it just the radios? Because that's what happened in Illinois when
we had
when
our
did it, and I
cameras.
started filming it with my cell phone.
And see, we were probably north of where you were in Illinois into Wisconsin, which is, the grid area. And yeah, we had our cameras set up, and often you can't see these with your bare eye, but we had our night vision gear up, which it of course came down. And yeah, we had lots of interesting activity that night before the transmission and after, but I was pretty sure something coincided when the radios started all squawking. And but we don't know because we missed it, but that's to be continued. There'll be a part 2.
We had the sighting also during the transmission. I shared with the group also, right? During the transmission, there's it looks like one of these shooting star, if you will, but during the transmission itself, this what looks like a so-called shooting star went through, right during the transmission.
We even had the International Space Station fly through, like the example of what we're not saying. It was one of those moments, and it was impressive, but to say the least, there was the other fun stuff too. But Jimmy, you do this stuff all the time for groups. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, it's dismissive, but I mean, you do have activity from your friends that you do this for, and you do send messages, and we can talk about the types of messages you send later if you want.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll cover that. A pleasure.
Perfect. We do have an audience now, so they're starting to creep in.
The activity may have been the radios, though. You're looking for something in the sky, and it may have been the activity of the radio, and it may be this trickster phenomena that it happens just as you're unpacking stuff. Because that's what they want. The old story that usually UFOs show up when people don't have their cameras, or
I put it
these stories where people like the girl from the Rolling Stones, where her husband, the guy from the Rolling Stones, where she said they were on the beach in Brazil, and then the thing started, and he said, "I got to go back and get my glasses," and he went running back to the house, and that's when it happened. So he missed the whole thing. And it's almost like the trickster phenomenon.
We had overlays of that too. I had walkie-talkies and other people had walkie-talkies. I, of course, charged all my gear before we tromped out there. Who gets out there and has dead walkie-talkies? Girl, so, there was those elements at play. And it wasn't till I got home, I think 2 days later, and after talking with Jimmy, and then with that group again, that I realized that with the time zone difference, when he had transmitted and we had received, because he sent a very specific message for us with our location. So an hour later.
And the other thing that we had that we didn't, when I was sitting there, I said, oh, it's another one of these CE5 things where nothing happens. And we walked away believing that nothing had happened except the radio's going off. And then when people started, one person said they showed that photograph with me and this thing in between me and Sinead. And then we started asking people for photographs, and there was photographs. There's all sorts of stuff that I didn't see any of it, but it was being picked up by cameras all over the place.
Yeah, often it's the post analysis, and we realize after the facts, all these things that happens. Often it's common. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so this is and so let me get back to that slide here. So if you recall, what we went through last time was these essentially the Earth grid and all these locations were tied to these Earth grid lattice, harmonic 144 and harmonic 44 times golden ratio. And once expressed in terms of kilometer, this is equivalent exactly to 432 kilometers. So these are, again, all these same numbers that come back over and over again. And again, I had been broadcasting this message on these two frequencies, right? 144.1 and 432. What we saw also is, if we get back to this triangular craft, these numbers we see related to these harmonics, are completely tied again to, the biology, DNA, and how our body operates. If you look at it, right, we presented that in the last update too, but I think it's good to show it again. If we look just like how the cells divide, for instance, right, if we represent that in terms of sacred geometry here, right, we see these two cells, and if we take the length of this green segment here, we divide it by the length of this red segment, it's exactly the golden ratio proportion.
Wow.
If we divide this length, the total length of this green and red segment combined divided by the blue segment, we get the golden ratio proportion again.
Yeah.
And what we find is that if we take a cross section for DNA, this is how it looks like. This was a famous picture released a few years ago. We realized that the DNA cross section is essentially, if you look at the center, it's a decagon with 10 sides and surrounded by 10 pentagons.
Wow.
And the decagon inside, every inner angle is exactly 144 degrees. And every angle of the pentagons is 108 degrees. And 108 is a very important harmonic. If you look at the bottom here, right, you take 108 times 2, you get 216 times 2, you get 432 again. And finally, the proportion itself of these pentagons is well known, like the pentagram, for instance. It's golden ratio proportion based as well, right? Take this length A here, the green length A, you divide it by length B, you get the golden ratio. So these harmonics, 144, 432, and golden ratio are embedded everywhere. And we see it like very, example of it. And one word, I mean, regarding this triangular craft also, it is possible, and obviously speculating here, but it is possible that this is actually a technology. Yeah. This graph is not proportioned that way by accident. The fact that these shapes are essentially resonating with these fundamental harmonics of light and golden ratio may give it, the ability to essentially to connect to the singularity and essentially travel instantly from one point to another in our holographic universe, just by the fact that this shape is in perfect harmony with the building blocks of the universe, literally, and the holographic universe we're in.
Quick question for you. Could it be that this is not a triangle craft and that you're just flashing the lights to give you the triangle shape and give you the hint as to what this is?
Absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Yep.
Because it seems like you said, like this may be a key to how the universe is put together, and they're trying to get it through our heads. This is it. Take a look. Take a look. This is how it works. But they're not telling you directly. They're allowing someone like you to go out there and figure it out, that this is a key to how the universe actually operates.
No, absolutely. And, I call it a craft because for a lack of a better word, how could we prove anything, right? I could call it lights, but somebody could say, well, maybe it's a craft, right? So I'm using the craft, but you're totally right. I mean, this can be just this light flashing.
This ties into the conversation I was telling you guys about that sphere within the cube craft and what that could represent. Mm-hmm. Is that a form of communication? Like flashing these lights, is that a form of communication through mathematics? And for maybe some pop culture enthusiasts or, people in the community, this is what they were doing in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When they were playing the music and they're flashing the tones and they're trying to get like a response back. That's a similar thing that we're sort of discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will see in the next few slides, and that's going to be the core of this presentation. Really, that's what transpires out of it. These harmonics and this golden ratio, and I'm getting to that, the core of it now. This is, so essentially all this work that I've been doing over the last many months on this, and more specifically on this harmonic and golden ratio, and with this golden ratio triangular craft, really led to the development of this formula here, which I called the universal formula for the light encoded reality matrix that we essentially embedded in. Okay. And what I'm going to be attempting to demonstrate today in various ways is how this formula drives everything in our holographic universe, in our physical world, or what we perceive as our physical world. So what we look at, if we look at the left side of this equation here, just to explain briefly, this number 1 here represents the singularity, the whole holographic universe or unity consciousness. Okay. It's really, essentially, this formula links and connects finally, the material world, or what we perceive as being the physicality or material world, to consciousness through this equation. And that number one represents that, the totality of everything. And what we see on the right side of this equation, or these, is the product of these two harmonics, 144 and 432, which are harmonics of light, essentially light template, because we are made of light. We're made of light vibration, essentially. What we perceive as being physical or physicality or matter is just this light vibration, vibrating at different frequencies. But this is what the principle is essentially here. And the golden ratio is as I said, is demonstrated as being a key driving force or driving principle, and essentially drives all fractality in our universe. This equation, I obviously validated it mathematically. We see at the bottom here, I won't go too much into the detail of it, but for those who are into math and want to do the high accuracy calculation of this equation, we just need to use the speed of light harmonic in a vacuum, convert that into nautical miles per geometric seconds, and I will explain that a little bit later here, why we do it this way. But again, you multiply this harmonic and golden ratio, you get essentially to the number 1, which represents the totality of a holographic universe. And what we'll see in a few slides here, this even feeds into the general relativity equation, the famous E = mc squared. It feeds directly into it, and it's demonstrable mathematically. So, but we'll see that in a little bit here. Again, here, this is this slide a representation of what I just talked about. We talked about the golden ratio, being responsible for fractality and key driving force in our universe. And these harmonics, 144 and 432, I mean, the best way I could represent that is, if we watch a movie, for instance, right, we essentially, what we see on the screen appears real, right? We see images and landscapes and all kinds of things. But what actually we're seeing is just light vibration, right? It's just light at different frequencies. So we see colors, and everything that we see on the screen essentially is just an amalgam of waveforms, right? All packed together that we decode, or brain decodes, and turn that into some kind of physical reality or perception of physical reality. And so that equation is not different, really. These harmonics of light, 144 and 432, or these light vibrations, if you will, that are the light templates of the holographic universe we're in. And it's all, again, driven by the golden ratio proportion. So what I mean by that, this equation drives everything in our universe based on my conclusions. For everything that I've looked at in terms of the constant in physics and mathematics, for instance, and many other things that we're going to talk about, like the Schumann resonance and so on, there's an equivalent in terms of these harmonics and golden ratio to everything. And this was really stunning to me. Obviously, this was the big, like, wow moment, if you will. But if you look here on the left side, I'll just give you an example here. And I'm going to go through a couple of example in great detail and show more example of it. If you take the Planck length, for instance, right? The Planck length is one of the building block in the quantum physics, for instance, right? This is the smallest thing that can exist in our universe. The smallest proportion of the smallest thing that can be quantified. The Planck length itself has a representation of this harmonic. It's essentially, we see it 144 times golden ratio squared divided by 432. When we calculate it mathematically, this equivalent harmonic is exactly in line with the theoretical value that you will find in a classic physics. Same thing for the proton radius. The speed of light has, obviously, we know speed of light harmonic is 144. Even the mathematical constant, such as pi, for instance, has an equivalent harmonic in terms of 144 golden ratio. It's stunning. The Euler constant E also, which is one of the most important mathematical constant in mathematics, which drives all the vortex physics and vortex mathematics, has a representation in terms of these harmonics also. Wow. The proton mass, electron mass, the golden ratio itself, amazingly, can be expressed in terms of harmonic 144 and 432. It's just 1 divided by the product of these two harmonics, and we'll show it mathematically later. The math is exact. The fine structure constant, same, and so on and so on. So we'll go through many of these examples. So the Schumann resonance itself, you look here, the Schumann resonance is exactly the reciprocal of harmonic 144.
Wow. Wow.
The speed of sound in water and so on. So I'll give more details in a minute here, but this is essentially what I mean by everything in our holographic universe, everything in our physics and mathematics seems to have an equivalent of these harmonics, which is the demonstration essentially that these harmonics are the true fundamental building block of the reality we're embedded in, which is essentially a reality made of light vibration. This is what it is. It's just what's driving everything. If you look on
critical, I mean, what you're saying here, I mean, this is what I was making the point that they may have just flashed the lights to give you the key to unraveling this, because this is pretty significant, this particular slide. I mean, I'm really impressed that it's
Grant,
almost like you found something that science has missed.
I want to point out to you though, too, because I know we've discussed it concerning Einstein and him projecting, himself on a beam of light across the universe, or other inspirations. And I know you wrote the book on how these inspirations come to people, but, I mean, I wonder if you tick off this list of who discovered these and the work they put into this, you'll find that inspiration is there as well. So I mean, I know we make all these connections of how does this community or the phenomenon drive.
Yeah, well, some people get dreams and some people get flashes in the sky. Yeah, what about your dreams? Do you ever have bizarre dreams that give you clues?
Oh yeah. I mean, most of the time, and there's an example. I have a few slides. I can tell a story once we get to that slide. That
okay. Go ahead.
I'll get back to it in a minute. So and if you look even on the right side, it's quite stunning too. The right side shows, when we convert, let's say a mile into a kilometer, of going from kilometer to mile and status time. All these have an equivalent in these harmonics itself, which is stunning. If you look, for instance, going from a nautical mile to a statute mile, there's a factor here. This is exactly that. 432 divided by 144 golden ratio. Going from kilometer to nautical mile is this. Going from a regular statute mile to kilometers is this. They all have a representation. And that's why often we see people looking at the mathematics of the Great Pyramid of Giza and so on. And sometimes they see measurements that fits more in kilometers in the metric system, but then they go into mile system and other things, and not quite sure why this is interchangeable. But the reason why it's interchangeable is that they are all linked to these fundamental harmonics and golden ratio. That is the answer to it. The next slide here, you may recall at the last update we also demonstrated, for instance, that if you look on the table on the left side here, that the average distance of the planet in our solar system, right, the average distance to the sun, are all golden ratio dead on. I mean, they're exactly accurate, right? The distance between Venus, for instance, and the sun is on average 36 golden ratio. The Earth to the sun is 50 golden ratio, and so on. They all follow this proportion. Even the average distance of the moon to the Earth, again, the moon has an elliptical orbit, obviously, but if you look up online, the average distance where the equilibrium is of this, of the moon around the Earth, it's 144 square. It's just incredible. Many other, we saw the things like the sun diameter is 432 times 2000 in terms of this diameter, the moon diameter, the Jupiter diameter, the precession of the equinox can be represented by 42 times 60 years, right? And I can do it here just to show it, right? If you look at the precession of the equinox, we take 432 multiply by 60, and we get exactly the precession of the equinox, which is 25,000 years, 25,920 years. Number of seconds in a day. And on the right side, we see even the velocity of the galaxies itself. The velocity of our own Milky Way is exactly twice the harmonic 144 in terms of speed. We demonstrated that in detail. Galaxy of Andromeda is going at exactly 144 nautical miles per geometric second. I mean, to the dot. The Pleiades cluster as well. The other thing that we discussed briefly, and that's why it's all tying together now, right? If you recall, we showed this video, and Jane 108, with whom I've been in touch with for the last many months, discovered that the flower of life itself had 144 components to it, right? If we count the number of petals, these little petals, and the voids, these curved triangle voids that represent the voids in the flower of life, there are 90 petals and 54 curved triangles. You add them up, it adds to 144. So there are 144 components really in the fabric of creations, you know, based on the flower of life itself. It all ties in together. So we end up with a picture really, and I'm going to show more detailed example of calculation here in a little bit, but we get a picture where this equation, based on the research that I've been doing here, leads us to being able to explain everything, at least everything that I've been able to look at seriously so far, from the constant in our mathematics, you know, pi constant, Euler constant, the speed of light, the fine structure, and so on, to all the formulas, you know, driving our physics. We'll see, for instance, that the brainwave, the frequency of a brainwave is perfectly in tune with the reciprocal of harmonic 144, which just happens to be, by the way, in the same range as the Schumann resonance, which also resonates at this harmonic as well, right? I'll show example of that. So let me go to the next slide here. Oh, by the way, just one more note while we're talking about this. You recall, Grant, you put me in touch with Sarah Breskman-Cosme several months ago after the last update. And so we had exchanged some communication. We've been exchanging some communication, and she, so I essentially submitted 10 questions to her, and she offered to do it, and she was kind enough to essentially integrate these questions to one of her quantum, healing hypnosis technique session.
Wow.
And the answers that came out of it were absolutely stunning, because they all exactly in line with what we're talking about here. And this is just one of the question that's very relevant to what we're talking here. So let me just read the question and what came up as an answer. And again, the person essentially telling this answer has no idea of any of this. This is highly mathematical, technical stuff, right?
And
So
I think if I recall, Grant, what was going on is that we were talking to all three of these people, and for some reason, the Sphinx kept coming up. She was talking with clients, the Sphinx was coming up, this stuff was coming through. We're talking with Jimmy, he's doing all this. And then we were also talking with Gary, who does that work on the code within the code within the code. So this is, yeah, I'm glad for this update too. Yay, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah. So it all comes up together. So here's the question. So from your perspective, do you get a sense as to the harmonic of light 144, and which appears to be everywhere in our world and nature and in nature? And yet the answer that came back is yes, the 144 and the phi ratio. This is a repeating pattern that is indicative of the holographic nature of our reality. This number is a representation of that, how all of nature can be broken down into this energy or this number, this ratio. It's a very profound stuff. And amazingly, if you look at it, the answer, or the question, I might say, the question didn't talk about the golden ratio or the phi ratio. The answer asked about the harmonic of light 144, and the answer that came back integrates the phi or the golden ratio proportion as well, in terms of, combined to the harmonic 144. So very interesting, you see. It's a very powerful validation, and to me.
Beautiful. I just let her know, by the way.
Yeah.
Being talked about.
You're like, hey, we're talking about you. I know. Hey, I did that to somebody last night, and they told me their ears were ringing, actually.
Yeah.
So
Well, she knew. I mean, of course, I asked her permission for this, right? I submitted the slide, so she was all excited about this as well. So yeah, so here it is. Maybe let me just show this brief. I just want to show this brief video here, because I want to make that very concrete for folks out there, just to demonstrate how vibration, frequency vibration creates form, creates geometry, creates physicality, right? So let me just pull this video quickly here. Where did I put it here? Okay, here we go. So I'll pause it here, but I think this makes the point here. This keeps going for a couple of minutes, but it just shows again that, you know, sound vibration, let me move this here, sound vibration and this harmonic of light essentially, you know, have the capacity and they're driving essentially the material world we live in. Okay, so before giving, I want to give an example of the Planck length here, what we talk about. I think this is a very relevant one. I just want to give a couple and more detail of this example, how it ties in. I just want to make a point here, which is very, very important. For those who are interested into more the mathematic aspect of it and trying these calculations themselves and do their own research, one of the secret to this, really, one of the trick is, which is very important to mention here, is that it is absolutely key in order to, you know, to look at it from the right perspective. We need to make sure that the units we're using, the distance unit and the time units we use, are in harmony with geometry. Once we select and make these units, fundamental units, in harmony with geometry, that's where this picture, this total new vision really appears to us. And in terms of the distance, when we look at physical distance, the distance unit or scale that we use that is perfectly in harmony with geometry is the nautical miles. And this mathematical trick actually was developed by you know, a pioneer in the field, really was done extraordinary work. And you know, this we see here how essentially if you look at it, there are 360 degrees right in a circle, 60 degrees division per degree, so that adds up to 21,600 degrees or nautical miles, or minutes of arc essentially. And this ties up exactly to the nautical miles because there are 21,600 nautical miles around the globe, right, to circle the globe, so in a full circle. So that's why these are in harmony. And is Bruce Cathy, just his name, I had a blank earlier. So Bruce Cathy is a pioneer in the field who's done fantastic work on harmonic mathematics and had developed actually this little trick here, which I'm mentioning about. So I want to give credit to him. He's passed away many years ago, unfortunately, but he's been a big inspiration, has done tremendous work in the field. Now, we're talking about distance here, right? The nautical miles. So we're going to use the nautical miles for all the rest of the presentation for distance. Now, in terms of time, what are the time units we need to use? So, you know, if we look at it, right, if we look at a frequency itself, right, a frequency is a number of oscillation per unit of seconds, right? This is what a frequency is. A frequency involves a measure of time. There's a time dimension in a frequency. Same with a speed, right? If we go to, let's say, a 90 miles per hour or 60 miles per hour or 60 miles per second, there's a dimension of time that is embedded here. So it is critical to transform this dimension of time into a geometric time, right? The time that will be in harmony with geometry. And I recently discovered, and I'm going to go that a little bit in detail in a few slides here, but I recently discovered a solution for circling the square. And this had been one big challenge for many, many years. And anyway, so I came up with a solution here. It's essentially the double square root of the golden ratio, allows us to convert Earth time, or the time we use in our day-to-day life, into geometric time. So we're going to apply this factor, and people out there want to do it mathematically. If you apply this factor, that will allow you to make that conversion. So this allows us essentially to convert frequencies on the Earth that, the regular frequencies we're dealing with, or speed, into geometric speed and geometric frequency. So this is one of the tricks here to make that happen. And all that really has to do with the 27 components of time that are embedded in the hypercube geometry of the flower of life. If you look here, there's a flower of life embedded here, right? So there are 3 by 3 by 3. These are 27 components of time. And that's what this, essentially the circling the square formula here allows to convert. And so I will close the parenthesis on it, but I want to make that clear before moving further. So let's pick an example here. Let's pick the Planck length. I just want to demonstrate how the Planck length itself can be expressed, for instance, in terms of these harmonics. So I do have a short video here, which I'm going to present, if you allow me. So here we go. So for the folks out there who don't know what the Planck length is, so this is a great introduction. So let me just make the volume is high enough. Okay, so here we go.
Scientists have already discovered the pixel-sized building block of our universe, which is known as the Planck length. The smallest possible size for anything in our universe. It is at this point whereby the rules of gravity and space-time are no longer applicable. In our matrix simulation, this Planck length can be considered as one single pixel, as it is the tiniest amount which can be quantified. In the 1890s, Max Planck, the renowned physicist, suggested a set of units to streamline the representation of physics laws by applying the 5 constants in nature, such as the speed of light, the gravitational constant, and Planck constant. Quarks and leptons are the building blocks of matter and incredibly tiny, less than a billionth of a meter in diameter. If zooming further, a billion times more, beyond zeptometers and yoctometers, 100 million times smaller still, and eventually reaching the end will be the Planck length. Nothing beyond this point will be visible, as everything is energy, and nothing is physical. The scale of a Planck length, which is represented by 1.6 by 10 to the power of 35 meters, is the smallest thing that can be measured in our world, and for comparison purposes it is 100 million trillion times smaller than a proton. The Planck scale was devised as a set of universal units, but also represent the boundaries of the known laws of physics. Any space smaller than the Planck length does not work, as the physics completely break down. At the Planck scale, physicists theorize the 4 fundamental forces: gravity, the weak force, electromagnetism, and the strong force unite into a single force of energy. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to like and subscribe.
Okay, so let me just close this and get back to the slide. So the Planck length really is one of the building blocks of quantum physics, right, in terms of its meaning and importance. So let's go to the slide here. So the Planck length itself, as we saw in the video, the actual number value is 1.616255 by 10 to the power of minus 35 meter, right? This is the length, the Planck length. Now, as I said earlier, we need to convert that into a nautical mile unit, right? So if you use any online tool, you can convert this meter value into nautical miles. We end up with 1.72708 by 10 to the power of minus 39 nautical miles. So this is the theoretical values that's currently accepted in the classical physics. And we see here that formula here, the classical physics formula, this is what's used in classical formula to calculate the Planck length, right? The square root of the Planck constant times the gravitational constant divided by the cube of the speed of light, right? So again, gives this 8.72708 value. Now, what I contend here, what I mentioned earlier, is that there is an equivalent representation if we use this light harmonic, 144, 432, and golden ratio, that match exactly that. And as a matter of fact, again, if we make that calculation, we end up with a match of, we get a number of 8.72678, which match the classical physics value at 99.97%. It's really remarkable. And I'd like to actually make it on the screen here. So I want to show folks out there that it's not made up, right? So let's calculate it. We'll do it, right? 144 times the golden ratio square. So times the golden ratio square is 2.618, right? 0.3398875. And we divide it by harmonic 432. Let's do this, divided by 432, we get, and let me put it on the same scale here. So we get 8.72678. This is what we see here. You see 872.678.
Wow.
So the match is perfect. There's
It's
one
pretty hard to
example.
call that coincidence.
Oh yeah, no, this is, and that's what I found is that essentially everything, at least that I've looked at so far, mathematics and physics has an equivalent in terms of these harmonics, this fundamental building block of our universe, which is essentially, again, made of light. These are light harmonics, and ties directly to our consciousness. Let me show another example here. Let's look at the constant pi, right? The constant pi, very known in mathematics. So let me bring again my calculator here, just to give another example. So what I'm saying here is that if we take the golden ratio squared and we multiply, mix and match with harmonic 144, the square root of 1.44, we get the pi constant, right? So let's do it. If you look here on my little calculator machine, the pi constant is 3.1416, right? If we round this, let's just remember this, 3.1416. All right, let's make that calculation here. So we take the golden ratio square, 2.618. 2398875, and we multiply by the square root of 1.44. So we multiply by 1.44 square root, we get 3.1416, exactly the pi constant.
Wow.
See, so by mixing and matching essentially this fundamental block of our universe, the building block of the harmonic 432 with harmonic 144 and golden ratio, we can recreate the entirety of our physical reality. For instance, we take 432, mix and match with this, divide by golden ratio of the square root of 144, we get the number of degrees in a circle, 360.
Wow.
If we take the harmonic 144 and multiply by, again, square root of 1.44, we get the famous Great Pyramid angle, 51.84.
Wow.
Again, 432 divided by 2 and multiplied by the square root of 144, we get the precession of the equinox, exactly 25,920 years. Everything is mathematics. Another one that's very interesting here, if we take the intersect angle, right? This is a Merkaba, right? This double tetrahedron. If you take the intersect angle, which we're very known, right? It's 19.47 degrees is the intersect angle. And we multiply, mix and match again with this harmonic, we get the Earth tilt angle.
And see, should we start calling that the Earth tilt angle craft? Because that one appears to people, or
right.
if it's not a craft, it appears to them in meditations when they play these harmonics. And,
That's a good point, you see.
And that's what the guy from the CIA, John Ramirez, who's the high-level guy from the CIA that just came public, he talks about the Merkaba all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's more. I have more on a Merkaba a little bit later, but this is, and again, we get these figures. If you see, we can produce by mixing and matching these harmonics with golden ratio and so on. We get the golden ratio square here. We get the reciprocal of harmonic 144. So it's really all over the place. And you asked earlier, Grant, a question if I had dreams or anything in my dreams. So actually, this one is an example where this was quite an experience, because I woke up in the night of July 25th to July 26th. I woke up at 3:33 a.m. in the morning with that exact relationship in mind. I mean, I had the base 12 to base 10 relationship, and I I link that directly to the square root of 144, because the square root of 144 equals 1.2, and that's what I woke up with essentially. And I woke up with that, by applying this this constant, if you will, this square root of 1.44, that this will produce significant numbers. And that's what I did. Actually, I was in my bed and I just turned around and picked my iPhone and I tried it right away on the golden ratio square here. That's the first thing I tried. And I got the pi and I was stunned. And then I tried it on this. I tried on 432 and I got the number of degrees and circles. I say, holy cow, okay. Right, there's something there. So the following day, I continued the work, of course, and expanded, and I built these slides based on that actually.
And that's your mashed potato moment from Close Encounter to the Third Kind. So,
so yeah, and from all this work, I've been able to calculate harmonics equivalent of our physics constants. So the folks out there who are into mathematics and physics, you can try these, the Planck constant, for instance, the gravitational constant G has a harmonic, equivalent of these in terms of these harmonics, and speed of light, obviously it's 144, and so on. So this is what came out of it. Now, this was not the end. By pushing this equation a little bit further, right? This 1 equal 144 golden ratio of 432, it's possible to extract the c-square components, right? You see the c-square component here?
Yeah.
And so we can produce a c-square component and feed that directly into the general relativity equation, the equal mc square, right? The same c square. When we do that, we essentially create an E equal mc square, but an equivalent in terms of golden ratio proportion. You see at the bottom here, we get energy equal to mass divided by 3 times the golden ratio, which is very significant because this tells us essentially that the conversion of mass into energy, whether it's in nuclear bomb or nuclear reaction or whatever, right? The mass is converted into pure light, pure energy. That conversion is done based on golden ratio proportions. And this is a new information here that, this is really profound in terms of implication. And again, this equation feeds into everything in our physics that I've looked at so far.
this is what me and a few others were all giddy about, waiting to do this third update, because you had sent us, little clips and you were so excited. And so I have to go, wow. Because this was exciting, building up to this too. So
this is very exciting, And you see here, we see again the representation of terms of equivalence. So the equal mc square equal E equal m divided by 3 times golden ratio proportions. This is very, very significant in terms of the implications in our physics. And even also what's amazing is that even the golden ratio itself is a function of that, right? Of the mass and energy. Now, obviously, I wanted to challenge that because I like to challenge myself on these things, and so I calculated essentially this slide here. I calculated using the classical physics equation, right? The E equal mc squared, the standard model. What the energy will be if we convert, let's say, 1 kilogram of mass of energy into material into energy, right? So converting 1 kilogram of matter or material into energy using the standard model will produce 8.98755 blah 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 to the power of 16 megajoule of energy, right? This is what the result is using the classical E equal mc square formula. If we use the harmonic model that I'm proposing today here, and we do the same calculation but using these harmonics mathematics, we end up with 9.988079 blah blah blah, which essentially match the result we get, with the standard model at 99.994%.
Wow.
So the mathematical validation is there. We get the same results either way, but again, I'm using a different path here. I'm using a path of these harmonics of light and golden ratio proportion, which, from my perspective at this point, I truly believe are the true building block of our holographic universe, of the reality we're in, which is essentially, again, made of light. I mean, these harmonics are pure light. right? It's consistent with what we've always been told. And it's also consistent with the fact that we always said that we're all one, right? Everything is one, oneness, singularity. I know Nassim Haramein, for instance, he talks a lot about singularity and so on, and everything is connected, in this holographic universe. And this is a mathematical formula here that represents that.
Jimmy, I might be straying just a little bit, but do you have a representation of, like, what do they call it? Tesla's, and I mean, it kind of looks like the black hole. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'll jump back in when I find
Sure.
the name.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll be happy to pitch in, on that. So this connects. This connects what we just talked about, and that's the fascinating part of it, right? This connects to the Rendlesham enigma directly. And I have a good update on that. And let me see here what time it is. Okay, so let me jump to this, and we can watch maybe this video here a little bit later. I have a compilation videos of recent sightings, but we can maybe play it at the end. So let me jump into the how this connects to the Rendlesham forest enigma. So as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, I've been in close touch with good friends Gary Osborne, and whom I'm really a big fan of, and I really encourage everyone out there to look at Gary's work. He's been really a true pioneer in the field, and his work is continuing. There's more coming up from him. And so, I encourage everyone to follow his work. It's very, very important. And so, and his work.
I have to jump in on that encouragement because, I mean, a lot of people just might recognize him from this book, but his books that he's put out leading up to the Rendlesham Enigma and setting up, what is he working on? 2 books right now to just get this information out. So yes, please, he is online and you can find his work. He shares what he's working on as it goes. So please check out Gary. And what I was referring to was Tesla's vortex math.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. The Tesla vortex max, really, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the Euler constant, right, the natural constant, it's called in mathematics, is driving vortex mathematics and vortex physics. And we see these equivalents, as we saw earlier. We have equivalent of these harmonics to this Euler constant. That's one connection we could make here.
Well, I like pointing that one out because portals seem to come up in our community often. And anytime you're talking portals, that kind of vortex and vortex mathematics.
We'll talk about it. I have a few slides. It's coming
Perfect.
up.
Hey, I might be able to connect you with some more people too. So
all right. Yeah, I know Gary also mentioned there are 2 books coming up, and so we look forward to that. And I know some of the information we exchange is going to integrate some of these findings that I just showed earlier. So it's all coming together nicely. So for those who are a bit less aware of that story, so the Rendlesham, right, code or message, this binary code message was downloaded, into Jim Peniston's. For those who follow that story, I think in 1980 he's got a download from this craft and had all this binary code essentially download that he put on paper. And it's only 30 years later that this binary code was decoded, and that's where Gary, was involved in decoding and trying to understand what was behind all this. And what we see here, the binary code message says here, exploration of humanity, 666-8100. We see a coordinate here, which is the coordinate of what we call High Brazil, which is apparently an ancient civilization, that was located in the west coast of Ireland, called High Brazil, before the Great Flood. And then the message says continuous for planetary, probably advance or advancement. Then there's some more, 4 coordinates continuous. And then we have essentially a set of 7, in total 7 coordinates that are given, through this, code. And we'll talk about that in a second. So eyes of your eyes, and again, the origin was this High Brazil and so on. So this is the code that came out of this binary code. And when we represent these locations on a world map, again, We see here where this UFO landed in England, in the Rendlesham forest. It is right located here. The High Brazil is located just, again, on the left side or west coast of Ireland. Sedona, very interestingly, was one of the coordinates that this extraterrestrial craft communicated. There's another one here, the Cana Pyramid in Belize in Central America. The Nazca Plain, or the famous Nazca Plain in Peru, was one of them. Of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza, right, was part of it, unsurprisingly. The Temple of Apollo in Greece, and finally, the Mount Taishan in China. So these were the 7 essentially locations here that are communicated through this binary code message. Now, so what I did here, the work that I did on it, I calculated, again, in nautical miles, which is this magical unit, right, which is in sync with geometry, in harmony with geometry. I calculated the distance between where the UFO landed, the landing site, and these 7 locations, okay? And so this is what we see here represented. So we see, for instance, the distance between the UFO landing site and Mount Taishan in China is 4,524 nautical miles. The distance between this craft, again, and Sedona is very closely, remarkably close, right? 4,529. Temple of Apollo, and so on, the Great Pyramid, 1864, and so on. So we have essentially the distance. And so the first thing, you know, that obviously naturally or instinctively I thought about doing was dividing these distance by the famous harmonic 144, 432 in golden ratio, and see if we will get anything significant. Okay. And amazingly, let's take the first one here, if we take Mount Taishan, for instance, at 4,524 nautical miles, if we divide that by the harmonic 1440, and I'm going to do it on the screen here. Let me pull up my calculator machine. Yeah. All right, let's do it here. So we take 4,524 and we divide by, 1440. We get the constant pi at 99.998% accuracy.
Wow.
Wow.
So to me, immediately I knew there was something behind this, and obviously this cannot be an accident, right? When you have that kind of accuracy on a mathematical constant. And so, of course, I kept the analysis going. Did the same for Sedona. Again, did the same thing. We get also constant pi because these 2 distances are pretty similar, pretty high accuracy. Temple of Apollo, now divided by 432, we get the constant pi also, 99.4% accuracy. The Great Pyramid, the distance, and we saw this one in the last update, if you recall, I had presented this one. The distance between the Great Pyramid and the craft landing site in Rendlesham is exactly 8 times golden ratio times harmonic 144, 100% accuracy. Wow. The Nazca Plain in Peru, it's 39, the 39th harmonic of 144, or 13 times 432. Again, 100% accuracy. I mean, it's to the dot. I mean, this one is quite impressive. So let me just calculate it just to show again how amazingly accurate these proportions are. Yeah. And let's do one here. So we say 39 times 144. Let's do it. So 39 times 144. 5616, which is exactly the distance between this craft and Nazca Plain. I mean, to the mile, to the dot. Wow. The limitation of the accuracy here, by the way, is mainly limited by the tool that I'm using to calculate the distance, you know, between, because I'm using an online tool on the internet, right? So there's inaccuracy in it. It's not, that's why when we see this 99.994% and so on, it's entirely limited by that tool. But me, the accuracy is just, you know, is high enough to is quite amazing. And let's pick one also. There's more to this, right? So in addition to having all these relationship, again, to these numbers that come back over and over again, this harmonic 144, this harmonic 432, golden ratio. Let's pick one and let's go a bit deeper. Let's go a bit a layer deeper. Let's take again this Mount Taishan, right? Mount Taishan was 4,524 nautical miles between where the craft landed in this Mount Taishan in China. We said it's equivalent to pi. So this is the representation of it here. But there's more to this. There's much more to this. If we dig deeper here, If we take this distance against this distance 4,524 between Mount Tyson and the UFO in Rendlesham, and we divide this time by harmonic 144 times golden ratio, we get exactly the tetrahedron intersect angle of the Merkaba.
Wow. Wow.
If we take this distance again, now we divide by 144 and times the square root of 144, we get the golden ratio squared. Extremely high accuracy.
Yeah.
And talk about that man that's behind your Merkaba there
Yeah.
and that significance.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a stunning one as well, right? Now, if you take the Euler constant, it's again, one of the most important mathematical constant. If we take that distance again, and we divide by 1440 times golden ratio, we get 6.97. And 6.87 in terms of harmonic, if we convert that into a frequency, if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about this, right? Discovery of the circling the square, the double square root of the golden ratio. When we essentially convert this harmonic into a frequency, or Earth frequency that we can, relate to, it's equivalent to the Schumann resonance, 7.86.
Wow.
And finally, we also get out of this distance and relationship to 144 golden ratio, we can recreate the Euler constant itself at very high accuracy. The Euler constant is 2.718, with a bunch of digits. So we get this mathematical constant. And again, what we see here on this picture, the Euler constant is the mathematical constant that's involved in vortex mathematics and vortex physics. It's one of the key drivers.
There you go, Tesla.
And finally, we also get the speed of light harmonic out of the Mount Tyson coordinates.
Wow.
And we also get the reciprocal of 432, amazingly. So anyone out there can look into these calculations, and you will see they are spot on. Let me mention something briefly before I go further, because it's a really important technical note here, and I have a slide about this. In harmonic mathematics, it's important to realize also that, in harmonics mathematics, we're allowed to move the decimal left or right, which is consistent with scaling, from macro to macro or macro to micro. But, 432 could be represented by this. You can slide the decimal by 1. You can represent it by this. You see, all these numbers you see here are equivalent in terms of harmonic mathematics. So I just want to make that clear. When the folks out there try it for themselves, let's keep that in mind. All right, so let me jump to the next slide. And let's talk just briefly about Sedona. So what we just went through was just, again, the information that's encoded or embedded in the distance or the coordinates between this Rendlesham UFO and Mount Tyson. That was just one example, right? We have also, obviously, Sedona was one of coordinates, as we saw. So if you take Sedona, again here, the distance between Sedona and the Rendlesham forest craft is 4,529. Divide by this. Again, this number here, if you recall, right, this 144 times golden ratio is the Earth grid lattice. This is what we spent much time on it in the previous update to talk about, the Earth grid lattice. So if we divide the distance between Sedona and Rendlesham divided by the Earth grid lattice, we get, again, this intersect angle of the Merkaba, 19.47 degrees. Interestingly, you may have seen this, right? This famous intersect of the Merkaba, or double tetrahedron star, is everywhere in the universe. We see on the sun, right? The sunspots are concentrated at these latitude. We see even on the Mars, the planet Mars itself, the Mount Olympus, where there's a lot of volcanic activity. It's all located on this intersect angle. The red spot on Jupiter, same thing. On planet Earth, we see that. I mean, even on planet Earth, right? If you look where the volcanic activity is located, for instance, you're going to find at these points, at this location of the tetrahedron star of our planet, that's where most of the activity is located. And there are ancient secret sites as well located there, because, again, the Earth, everything is about geometry, right? Or the holographic universe we're in, it's all about geometry and light frequency. And so that's why it's all connected to this. And even the face on Mars, like the pyramid of Mars, which is made of 5 faces, right? It's also and points towards the face of Mars. This is the DMV pyramid, it's called. The DMV pyramid, DMZ pyramid. The north is here, right, as the reference point. There's exactly, it's 19.47 degrees, passing right through the face on Mars, right? Do we think it's really an accident, a coincidence? So essentially, what came out of it, at least what I've looked at, from my perspective, is that all these coordinates from the Rendlesham forest enigma are rendering these numbers again, these harmonic 144, 432, and golden ratio. That's what comes out of it, right? And that's what came out of the golden ratio triangular craft, if you recall, this amazing geometry, which is a magnificent piece of perfection, really, in terms of geometry, reveal these harmonics again in golden ratio proportion. Now, obviously, I want to make that very clear that the Rendlesham enigma, there's much more to the code than that, and that's the work of Gary Osborne, right? And so, again, I encourage everyone to look at Gary's work, because Gary has discovered amazing things that are absolutely stunning. And so please look into this. So what I'm showing here is just an additional component to this. It just shows how this code is full of information.
His math is starting to cover such a wide range, and also just linking so many things that are so current, current scans of areas, and, I mean, really at the forefront of what is breaking with this kind of high strangeness. So I love it. But Jimmy, I have to admit, a few people in the chat have brought up Skinwalker Ranch.
We're going to talk about this in a minute. That's where we're going.
Can I ask a question before we get there?
Of course.
At Rendlesham Forest, there was a triangle of the pod marks, and it's like remember I brought at the beginning, is this a craft or are they just flashing lights? At the triangle, I don't know if there was a measurement done where you can get exact measurements where the pod marks are, because Jim Peniston mentioned the fact that when he was at the craft, it was like cemented to the ground. He looked under it and there was no landing gear.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what made those pod marks? Was it pod marks, or were they leaving the clue that you're looking at right now? Because he said there was no landing gear on this craft.
Right.
Yeah, well, I've not studied this specifically, but I would think, from my experience that, I have high doubt that, these craft just leaves burn mark of landing gear, right, on the soil. It's probably done on purpose by them, just for us to, because that's something we can comprehend, that's going to draw our attention, right? And maybe somebody's going to think about measuring the angles of this triangle. That's probably
you actually listen to Jim lecture, and I mean, it's not all the time, but sometimes he'll go into it further. Everybody assumes landing gear, but it wasn't any type of landing gear. What it looked like was light, if even beams of light, but it's not clear if it was just sitting in that sphere of influence or if there were beams that appeared to look like it held the craft up.
Right.
But it left imprints, and they took molds of those imprints. I believe they did measure the distance between them, and that's how they could gauge that the craft was around 9 feet.
What I read from the book briefly, that is that under hypnosis, Jim Peniston mentioned under hypnosis that the craft was there to auto-repair at that specific location. Was auto-repairing as if there was some kind of technical problems or something. And interestingly, right, when we make this calculation, we realize that the distance between this craft and the Great Pyramid is exactly 8 golden ratio times harmonic 144, which essentially this location is a vortex of energy, is a place where this craft could have extracted and harnessed free energy to auto repair, hypothetically.
There you go. And that's where we're touching on this grid. So
Off to Skinwalker.
We'll talk about Skinwalker. Let's talk about Skinwalker briefly. So before we get there, I have a couple of slides I want to mention. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I just want to put it on the record. So this formula here, this double square root of the golden ratio, which allows to circle the square, has been for a long time an unresolved challenge apparently, and I've never been into this, quite honestly. It just I came across this because I needed this to be resolved for my work. But anyway, I found this solution that to me was working out, and I submitted this solution to Jane, whom I've been in touch with, who's an expert, a worldwide expert in sacred geometry. And you know, so he confirmed that this was, you know, validated that this was working out. And the solution works specifically well with his, you know, the true value of pi. And I encourage everyone to go look at Jane's work. He's done amazing work in sacred geometry and demonstrated the true value of pi being 3.144 in a bunch of decimals, and which is essentially 4 divided by the golden root, and is the true value of square of the pi. So with if we use the true value of pi, the solution I found resolved the circling the square at 100%. I mean, it's exact. If we use the current value of pi that people know, 3.1416, it resolves it at 99.9% all the time. So you can take any, essentially circling the square is essentially how you can, you know, what is the relationship between the side of the square and the diameter of the circle that will produce the same surface area, right? That's what it is. So I was able to validate it. And again, I'm not going to go through this in detail here, but I just want to flash it on the screen for the record so people can look at it and play with it the way they want. But this is an example of the demonstration that this circling the square solutions works. And it works, especially now in the context of what we're doing. As I mentioned here, I'm using this relationship here to convert harmonics into frequencies, right? It allows to convert the dimension of time into her frequencies that we comprehend. That's in our scale of unit, if you will. And this is what leads to the Skinwalker wrench, and we'll talk about it now. So if you recall in the last presentation, you know, I showed that the Skinwalker wrench itself, based on the grid lattice, this harmonic 144 times golden ratio Earth grid lattice distance. Based on that, we could demonstrate that the Skinwalker wrench was located on a vortex of energy, right? If you look at the Skinwalker wrench distance to the Great Pyramid is 6,060 nautical miles, and which is exactly, and I'm going to do it on the screen here just for the record, right? So if we take 26 times golden ratio times harmonic 144, so take 26 times golden ratio, so 1.618. Okay, and times the harmonic 144, we get 6,058 rounded, right? This is what we see here, 6,058, right? This is why, based on this calculation, the Skinwalker wrench is located on a vortex of energy, which essentially allows to open up portals, right, and extract this energy. So recently, there's I have not been following the second episodes or the second season of Skinwalker Ranch. I was very busy last year, but this year I picked it up a bit late, and I started watching a little bit of it. And there's a gentleman that texted me also through the internet about this 1.6 gigahertz. He said, "What do you think about this 1.6 gigahertz?" And I had not really looked into it yet, or had not again looked into this. And so essentially, I immediately, since the Skinwalker wrench is located on a vortex of energy on a harmonic 144 of the Earth grid, if we convert this harmonic into a frequency using this solution here that I'm presenting today, this double square root of the golden ratio, which allows to convert the harmonics into a frequency, right? And we slide the decimal to put this frequency into gigahertz, we end up with 1.618. So essentially, the frequency equivalent to the Earth grid 144, once expressed in gigahertz, is 1.618 gigahertz. By the way, this is amazing. This was stunning to me because 1.618 gigahertz is equivalent to the golden ratio. The golden ratio is 1.618.
Wow.
So let me play a short video here.
Have you passed this through to the Skinwalker people?
Why is Skinwalker so special? Solved by Jimmy Blanchette.
Maybe we can get this to them and see if we can get a comment from them, because it's
right.
significant.
They might be watching this. You never know. I say
We'll make sure they see it. I'll make sure they see it.
Somehow these things get through to who needs to see them. Isn't that part of our fabulous phenomenon
I
too.
no, I don't think so. Because if that was true, then Jimmy would have won the Nobel Prize. He hasn't won it yet.
We need somebody, we need to start our own prizes.
That's our job to get it out for him.
It is, you're
Yeah.
right, you're right. It's all part of our contract.
There you go. Okay, go ahead.
I've been in touch with a gentleman, who has direct contact with the Skinwalker Ranch, Andrew Beasley. So I think he's going to share that information with them. And I said, of course, wait before we, have this presentation today before doing it. But hopefully he can pass the message across here. So let me show you here this short video clip that demonstrates that.
Look at this one right here.
I don't know what that is.
What the hell is that in the sky?
To the south.
There it is.
It's moving real slow.
Where I'm looking at it, there's no red or green or white lights on it.
That thing is big and spherical.
Yes, it is. It's got a black dot in the center of it. What in the crap?
I am seeing a double peak near 1.6 with some sidebands. I noticed that the spectrum analyzer is giving us once again this mysterious 1.6 gigahertz signal. The 1.6 is often seen in conjunction with UAP activity.
Yeah, okay, don't play any more of that or we're gonna get copyright violations all
No
over the
way.
place.
No, we're using it to-
Educational purposes only.
No,
Thank
we're
you.
helping them out.
Yeah, well, this
Wow.
actually, I picked a segment that's that's already on YouTube. It's in the open
Right,
public.
I know.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty significant.
yeah,
It
so this was a big revelation to me as well, because this was another independent validation, if you will, of the mathematics, that the mathematics works, right? Not only these harmonics and golden ratio, 144, 432 and golden ratio, essentially have an equivalent in everything that we can look at, physical reality or the holographic universe we're in. But these are kind of independent confirmation that are very interesting to me, that helps validating this whole thing, right? This whole formula. And he mentioned here, right, that this 1.6 gigahertz radio frequency is being seen or detected when there's UFO or UAP activity, which would make sense, right? Because these intelligences, this universal intelligence, use Earth grid vortexes and so on to travel and so on. So they're using this energy. So essentially that radio frequency is naturally being released as a result of the Earth grid activity or vortex activity, which ties totally into what we're talking about.
Or they're giving them a hint to watch Jimmy Blanchette.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
Circle too.
So back in May 31st, 2022, which is not long ago, of course, after having found this, I decided to broadcast myself this frequency, this golden ratio frequency, I call it, right? So what I ended up doing is transmitting a harmonic of it. So I transmitted 161.8 hertz, right? It's an audio frequency that we can hear, and we're going to hear it in the video. So using I broadcasted it on 144.1 megahertz using my antenna system. I was targeting Arcturus here. And so let me just play the video of what happened when I was broadcasting this frequency.
Wow.
Okay, so and this again, this sighting occurred while broadcasting that very frequency.
Wow. I was just gonna ask.
And this was a very powerful confirmation to me that there was something behind this real, right? This was a powerful validation, a confirmation. Interestingly, this, of course, the natural instinct was, okay, what's special about this triangular craft, right? This shape or this angle, is there information encoded in this? What came to mind when I saw that was this tetrahedron, double tetrahedron stars, right? The Merkaba, looking at the shape, but we don't see obviously the rest of it. But what came to mind, right? If we look here, what we did for the Skinwalker range, we converted this harmonic of light 144 into a frequency that is part of our RF spectrum frequency, right? That's why they are detecting this 1.6 gigahertz.
Yeah.
But that made me think, okay, what if we do the same with the harmonic 432 now, which is a very, very important harmonic as well, which is one of the three pillars of our holographic universe. Yeah. If we apply the same strategy here, we convert this harmonic 432 into a frequency, we get 446 hertz. And that's what also I made the connection, right? Because this sighting had three lights, right? While we broadcasted this frequency, this 161.8, these three lights, popped in and out. So if we multiply again this golden ratio frequency, we get 486 hertz again, you see?
Yeah.
So I was drawn to, I tested recently, and this is very recent work, to see, okay, what is special about this frequency? Can we see something special? So I ran this frequency, 486 hertz, through a cymatic software, a special cymatic application, to see what the geometry of this 486 hertz will produce. And I have a short video here, so let me just play this. Again, this is a cymatic image of this frequency.
Here you go, Julie.
Wow.
But there's more to this. Look at this. What comes out of it.
Yeah.
If we look at it, there are 18 external energy nodes out of this shape. And if we compare to the flower of life, we get exactly the same configuration.
Holy cow.
18 energy nodes.
Hopefully Travis is watching.
So this frequency is very special. This frequency is really a harmonic of the flower of life itself.
Wow.
In which I will contend that if you use for healing purposes, there must be very probably powerful application to this frequency, because this frequency is in harmony with really the fabric of creation, right? The flower of life, where all the platonic solids can be produced, and so on and so forth.
And I'll feel, remiss if I don't bring up, since there is talk in our community, this is the type of work that kind of happens at the Monroe Institute, with their sound technology and their therapy and healing and exploring consciousness. Like, yeah, absolutely. I know people were wanting to know where they could, maybe find more information on things like this. So that's a good website. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We're getting towards the end of the slides here. So this is a very recent sighting I had recently, also July 18th. These four lights just popped in and out right in front of my antenna array. And, looking at it carefully, it's very interesting to see that this shape is exactly the shape of the symbol lambda. The symbol lambda in physics, essentially, if you look at the little formula here, you take the speed of light and you divide by frequency, you get the lambda. So essentially, this is a representation. The lambda means a wavelength, which essentially means a frequency. This is the symbol for wavelengths of frequency.
Okay. Wow.
So that was a significant sighting, which I thought was significant. Okay, I'm going to go through quickly to this. So as I mentioned earlier, if we mix and match, what I'm showing here is how the Schumann resonance itself is directly in harmonic resonance with harmonic 144. Again, we apply the you know, the current Schumann resonance that we know of, right, 7.83 hertz, we divide by the circling the square formula that I mentioned earlier, which gives us a harmonic frequency 6.94, which is exactly the harmonic 144 reciprocal.
Yeah.
We see even the speed of sound in water is also based on the reciprocal of harmonic 144. I'm showing this because this leads to a bigger picture here, right? If we look at what we saw earlier, right? The DNA molecule, we saw the cells replicating, the harmonic 144, 432 relationship and golden ratio were all over our DNA and in the biological world. Now we see that the speed of sound, even in water, resonates to these harmonics. The earth itself resonates with this harmonic. It means that everything surrounding us, really, we're made of water, or 65% of our body is made of water, right? Everything that surrounds us, including the earth, which we're on, resonates at these harmonics of light. That's why I'm saying it explains everything. I found even that if we convert if we take the qubit, right, it's used in Egypt, right, for all these constructions, the primary measurement units, the long royal qubit. If we take that distance, the qubit is equivalent to 0.52365 meter. And if we convert that into a frequency, we can end up to this, you know, harmonic 144, you know, we're at 99.4% match with harmonic 144.
Wow.
So the building block of these ancient sacred sites essentially are resonating with these frequencies. This is the earth frequency. And in terms of harmonic, the qubit is exactly equivalent to the golden root here, square root of the golden ratio. If we find also, and I have a video on this, that's interesting here, the speed of sound in the granite material of the Great Pyramid itself. If you look, for instance, the granite, the speed of sound in granite, if you look up on the internet, is 6,000 meters per second. If you convert that into the magical unit that I talked about, right, the nautical miles per geometric second, it's 288, which is 144. Divided by 2, you get 144.
Wow.
So even the sound resonating in the Great Pyramid, the material itself, the granite material of the Great Pyramid is in perfect harmonic resonance with these harmonics.
Can you go back to the qubit slide for a sec? I want to have a question. The qubit, that is a measurement of body length to body length, right?
They use they lose from the elbow here to this is the elbow to the palm. So this is this is
people would bring up the fact, well, you know, we keep changing different ways of measuring, but that may be the way they're giving you these flashes, they're giving you these signals, and that's what they would give to people in ancient civilization that they would understand. So there's a relationship in the length of the body. Even in the body, there's this mathematical relationship that agrees with everything else.
No, exactly right. That's exactly right.
Before you move on from the sound, Jimmy, right there. So, why would you need to bury somebody with such high sound technology? I mean, do you think there was tombs in there, or do you think maybe people were laying there getting this kind of sound wave therapy?
Oh yeah, I mean,
I don't know. The mind wanders there. We can move along.
Opening up a kind of worm here. I can talk about this, but
I know.
If you look at the king,
some other time.
If you look at the King's Chamber dimension, you look on the upper right side of that slide here. These dimensions also all in harmonic with 144 and 288 and so on, right? So this sarcophagus, so-called, where never they've ever found a mummy in a pyramid ever anyway. But this could have been some kind of transformer, a step up or step down transformer to tune the vibration of the person laying in this sarcophagus to higher dimensions, right? Because this is what it looks like.
We'll do a whole slideshow with Gary on that one. How about that?
Go ahead, Grant.
I was saying that the pyramids would be all over the world. So this was not a coincidence. It was like they were, dropping these hints all over the world in terms of, relationships, and like, why would you build a pyramid? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. And I have a short video of it. I'm going to play just briefly here, but just to show the sound is just amazing. The sound perfection in the Great Pyramid. One experiencer I know, Lauren Kurt, went to the Great Pyramid and inside the chamber and did some chanting And she made a nice video and she allowed me to show it. So let me just show you a minute of it just to show you what's happening here when you chant in the king chamber.
There you go.
So I think you get the point. So it's pretty powerful and very indicative here of the special property of this chamber.
Who got goosebumps in the chat room? I want to hear some thumbs up. I did. It went through it went down my arms and down my like shin bones.
and oh yeah, this one I wanted to present this one as well. It's a very important one. You know, the famous sun portals, right, that are happening in the spring equinox, for instance. This one is very known at Chichen Itza. You know, where exactly at the spring equinox at that moment, the sun passed through this little hole here, and that's the indication that, you know, people have, you know, mystical experience, their portals opening. Well, if we look at it the way that we talk about mathematically here to see if we can explain that, why that is, why is there a portal opening at that moment? Well, if we calculate the distance between the sun, right, because we're talking about sun portals here, the distance between the sun and the earth at that precise moment of the spring equinox, it's exactly 149,000.6 million kilometers or 80.78 million nautical miles. And that number is exactly equivalent to 50 golden ratio proportions. Which is it?
Coincidence, Jimmy. It's coincidence.
Yeah, right. and equivalent to 144 times golden ratio divided by 2.88, and 2.88 is also 144, right? So we see again over and over again the same number, the same harmonics, and we see these amazing things happening on the Earth and based on, you know, on the Earth grid and the sun portal. So I found this very, very interesting here as well. Schumann resonance, we talk about it. I'm almost done here. I just want to flash quickly some of these slides for the record. I'm not going to go in detail, but the calculation is the same. We can get the Schumann resonance this way by, you know, applying this formula, circling the square on the harmonic 144. We can get the golden ratio squared as well, mix and match again, this, you know, golden ratio and this time harmonic 432. The high accuracy calculation is here for the folks out there who wants to do it mathematically. Again, it's based on the speed of light harmonic in a vacuum, which is 143.528. This is the high accuracy number for 144 in this calculation. And again, here, amazingly, right, if you look at we mix and match this 432 with the circling the square, we get exactly the Earth tilt angle at 100% accuracy. It's 23.844. Here's how we can get the golden ratio itself. We can get the constant pi again using this little relationship here.
Yeah.
And we divide the golden ratio by this formula circling the square, and we get the harmonic of the speed of light again.
Wow.
So this ends my presentation in terms of the slides I had to show today. I have, by the way, for the folks out there who are interested, I have on my YouTube channel, I made a transmission a few weeks ago. It's a 22-minute transmission, and during that transmission, there were 14 different UAP sightings that took place. And so I made some, you know, I explained what's happening, and I described, you know, in real time, again, what we're seeing. So I made a video to show that, and people can see in real time. And there was in the case, what we see here actually on this picture is one of the ship was stationary, you know, for over 10 minutes, was just flashing from there during the transmission, and this is a close-up of, you know, this UFO signaling during the transmission. But I encourage everyone to look at this material. It's online on my
What's your
YouTube
site
channel.
address? What's your site? Your YouTube site?
It's a CE5 videos, and so maybe I can send it to you, and you can put it on your,
We'll link
you know,
it. Yeah.
you can link it. So this way you're going to have everything. And so, again, I had so many slides. You know, here I think I have over 300 slides of material, so I had to cut it down a little bit. You know, there's a lot of stuff, and it keeps going. So what I'm doing is, as we move along, let me just put you back here on a large screen. So as we move along, and I find new things, let me just stop the share. Okay. So as I find new or discover new things, I immediately try to crystallize the information in slides so it's not lost, because sometimes we have this flash moment of inspiration and the next day we forget, right? So I try to crystallize it. So there's a lot of material out there, but it's all really what you saw. It's all coming together in one formula, really, and it looks like it's working. So we'll keep exploring, and I encourage everyone out there to challenge this, try it themselves, try your own things. And I'm sure there's so many more things, so many more connections we need to make. But I encourage the folks out there to try it from themselves and see, you know, what they can find.
Right.
What?
You say try it for themselves. Do you still encourage people to contact you and you can use one of your templates to send or transmit for them? Or you mean and try for themselves, build it all, the antenna, the whole shebang?
Yeah, you know, I'm
Right.
always happy to do it, you know, as time permit, of course. I've been kind of providing this little service for the community for over 5 years now. And again, it's free. It's not making any money out of this. I do it just for free for people to have experience. And, you know, eventually people can do it themselves, right? And they have the little radios and they can explore themselves.
Do you happen to have the picture of the message you transmitted for the group I was with? I just think it was a very nice transmission, and that's what we were going to touch on before I'll let you go, is what types of messages do you send for people?
Yeah, I do have it somewhere. Let me just give me 1 second here. I have it here. And we had a sighting, as I said, also, right, during the transmission. That was pretty cool. Actually, I have it here. Just give me 1 second here.
And when was that, Nicole? Give us a time frame.
Oh, when were we there?
And who was there?
Well, it was kind of a private group. I don't know if they want to
secret.
name drop
Okay.
everybody there.
I
But
see.
no, my friend Melissa Kane invited me, so I'll name drop her. And she's kind of famous in the community because she's in that new Alien Abductions Answers film. So, you know, I run with these Midwesterners, so we all get together sometimes.
And that was what, a couple of weeks ago or a week ago?
That was in June, the beginning of June, I believe, or the last week of, last week of June. There we go. Sorry, I did a lot this summer.
Yeah, I cannot find it quickly here, but maybe we can link it up. But yeah, it's.
I got to meet Gary Osborne. Yeah. Gary and his wife were there, Heather, as well. So.
One comment I'd like to make, when I wrote the book Inspired, I looked at what Nicole was referring to before. I looked at all the inventions of the Nobel Prize winners and all the guys who invented all the major things. And one of the patterns I came across is, when you were doing it today, seemed to flash again, is that you get to a point in history where it's sort of like you get to the edge of the veil and everybody gets the idea at the same time. It's like oxygen or something. There was like 6 people invented it. The phone, there was, when Graham Bell put his patent in the morning, somebody put the same patent in the afternoon. And what I see here is, I see you and I see Gary Osborne, and now you've linked in this discovery at Skinwalker Ranch for the 1.6. And you see that everybody seemed to be hitting the same thing at the same time. So it may just be a matter of time until, like consciousness, where it flips and everybody just suddenly starts to get on it. And so hopefully that's what happens. And hopefully you're the guy that gets the Nobel Prize for it.
Well,
I think it is. There's no doubt you found something very key about the universe and how it works. And I'm actually working on a paper now, how reality works. And it's this whole idea that, you know, people live in this sort of, what do they call it? Naive reality, where you believe everything you see. And when you start to look more and more, it becomes more and more complex, more and more holographic. and you start seeing all these interactions and just this complexity of the universe, which I think is key. What your thing points out is that everything is connected. Everything is, there's nothing random going on here. That there's all these mathematical relationships between biology and physics and all this kind of stuff. And I'm every time I see it, I'm just absolutely totally impressed with what you do. I'm just unbelievable. I just can't believe it.
This is very exciting, and to me, I mean, seeing that everything equals one, right?
Yeah.
The famous singularity that we all know it. That's what it is. It was a big epiphany, right? It was a big revelation that it all comes together and links finally, science and spirituality, or science and consciousness. There's no disconnect between the two now, right? If we look at this equation, and that's what I think I've been attempting to demonstrate. And there are much more. As I said, I have 300 slides of material here, that more demonstrations of that, right? It's really there. This, as you said, I think there's a big movement right now. This information, it's probably time for this information to come out.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to hear from many other folks who are going in the same direction, and it's going to percolate everywhere, I think.
Yeah. One question I did have for you is you've done a lot of research in terms of looking at papers and what people have done. Have you come across anything that indicates that U.S. military or Black Ops or DARPA or any of these people have discovered these sort of relationships, or they're looking into this kind of stuff?
Well, I've not looked into so much into this, quite honestly. I've been focusing on, I've had enough of the work I was doing on, but one should probably wonder, right? Probably that, we know that many things have been hidden from humanity for a long time. And if we look at it, right, we are rediscovering what was known before. I mean, all the mathematics in the Great Pyramids and all these ancient sacred sites, all these numbers, these harmonics and golden ratio were always present. So we're just rediscovering what was known before, and that knowledge, for whatever reason, was lost in our history, and now it's we're rediscovering it, and it's coming out back in public domain. So I think that's the cycle, we're going through.
I just thought you may have run up against a paper, because sometimes I'll do that, where I'll be working on something, trying to look something up, and all of a sudden I'll see some paper come up from some government agency and go, holy cow! I mean, like, sort of a vindication that they're working on, because you always hear the stuff about the secret societies and the secret groups that were together, and they had all the guys that built the Manitoba Parliament buildings. They were all these guys who were using mathematics, and they had the tour of the Parliament buildings, where all these mathematical things and how they all fit together and stuff. So I guess they've got this stuff, and as you pointed out, they've had this stuff for a long time. People have known about
Grant,
it.
I'll remind you, and honestly, I sent Jimmy an article last night and was like, hey Jimmy, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, oh God, yep, Jimmy and I are friends now if I'm sending him stuff at 3 o'clock in the morning. But so Jimmy broadcasts using, and I always want to confuse them, Earth to moon beam technology, right? Which, guess who developed this, Grant?
That's
the U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy. Oh.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, and after the Second World War,
the article I sent Jimmy said, is the U.S. Navy baiting UFOs? I know
that the moon-bound communication itself was developed during the Second World War era because they used this modality to communicate, right, from one continent to another. There was no, obviously, cell phone at the time. There was no internet. There was nothing. There was just regular radio wave. But a radio wave is, if you want to communicate on the other side of the planet, it's not necessarily straightforward. So it depends on the condition of the sun and so on. So they had developed the moon bounce, technique to communicate. Note that I'm not only bouncing off the moon, right? I'm targeting planets and things like that. So throughout our solar system.
And that's what I was going to point out. Instead of using the moon to come back to Earth, Jimmy uses the moon and broadcasts out into infinity and beyond.
Or he points it at other planets, right? You pointed at Saturn and Jupiter and stuff.
Oh yeah, and the radio wave will physically travel there. I can tell you at a 250,000 watts that I'm using in free space, the radio wave physically reach these planets and these moons that are like Jupiter are like 79 moons or something. I mean, it's insane. And so if there are any ships there, any non-human intelligence parked there, it's like delivering a message to their doorstep, literally.
Right. Which I want to slide in this question from our chat room, because I think they were seeing it when you were showing your antenna. Arcturus, the star, do you always set your antenna to that star, or do you set it to others, or why was that one?
I set it to others, and I want to mention, when I'm pointing my antenna or I'm targeting a star or a planet, let's say a star like Arcturus, which is quite far away. I'm not assuming that if there's a sighting that it's because I targeted Arcturus necessarily, or it's an Arcturian response, right? So, but I target stars and planets that we know that are visible, because it's kind of makes sense. But yeah, I target the Vega, Arcturus. You saw in the video that's on my YouTube channel. I targeted the Orion Belt and so on. So yeah, I look at different targets depending on when it's visible, right?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm like, as usual, and I'm sure we've maybe left out, like you said, 200 slides. You went through maybe 60 there, and you've got 300 or plus. So I know there's going to be updates to come too, because
now it's your and my job to get this out, especially to people. Like, there's a few people that I'm going to send this to say, have you guys actually looked at this kind of stuff? Like, come on. And it's like, there's some people that should be looking at this, I think. And Skinwalker is one of the people that should be looking at this, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Yeah. They're doing a lot of work there. They're taking it seriously. So I appreciate what they're doing. I think, sometimes it's just a matter of looking at it from a different perspective.
That's what's important, because we're all a part of it. We're all a cog in the clock. So
yeah, well, I think Skinwalker also started very nuts and bolts initially, right? And that they are starting to move towards the real thing. And I think that's, they're realizing that it's not as physical and as nuts and bolts as we obviously it was initially, looked at by them. So they're going in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, and they would need a mathematical mind to see the relationship, because a lot of people, the numbers don't really mean anything. They're looking for physical things in the sky. But a person like you will pick up the number and then say, well, wonder, and then you divide it by something and it's like, oh yeah. So you need a mathematical guy there to see the importance. So I think that's what your broadcast shows, is that there's importance to numbers. And if you do that, you may be able to figure out some of the stuff that's going on in Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah,
and to me, it's amazing that it's all connected, right? If we look at the golden ratio triangular craft, all the figures that were embedded, this harmonic 144 432 golden ratio connects to the Rendlesham forest enigma directly. I mean, it's undeniable, and connects to the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, it's all connected. It all makes sense, and then mathematically we can show it. It adds up perfectly well, I mean, with great accuracy. So it's very encouraging to see where that's going.
And just to touch on that, like with my group, I mean, I think there were some motivating agendas. We picked that location in Wisconsin, Azatlan, because it does connect to this grid. And then I think that's what you'll find with more and more groups that get out there and try to explore this. This isn't just necessarily CE5 or heist, like sitting out, in a circle or playing your meditation singing bowls. And, there is a little bit more into exploring this phenomenon at locations like this. And you can take it seriously or you cannot, but people do need to really see what's going on with groups like this, and people you help, and boots on the ground sort of, contact modality exploration is how I put it. So
my last question, Jimmy, is what you got any big things planned that you're looking at to do next?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's still unfolding, Grant. It's unfolding by the day, literally. As I mentioned, like the 486 hertz, for instance, discovery, and the how it matched the flower of life in terms of this energy. This was like less than a week ago, and I keep finding stuff. It's because now that this formula and everything's connected, everywhere I look, I see it, right? When we look at it with the right perspective, then we can explain what's happening. And so mathematically it works. So I'm looking at, one thing and I try it mathematically, it works, right? So it becomes one more thing. So it keeps building up like that. I know also the Rendlesham forest, there's still a lot more behind this. I have not talked about this, but for instance, if we take the distance between the Great Pyramid and the UFO, where this UFO landed, and we compare and we divide by the distance between the craft landed and the Temple of Apollo in Greece, then we get the harmonic 144 again, right? There are many other things, relationship that I have not shown yet. I don't have slide yet, but it's there, and this keeps going. So, yeah. It's
well, I think that's something you can point out. That's sort of not directly in Gary's work yet either, though. But so, like, you take your house at Sedona, and then you start doing these branches off, and then you're finding, places like where my group works. So like you find these ratios from Sedona as well. So if there's other locations from these sort of maybe power spots on this grid, then, I mean, that's even more mathematics to explore, and more people going to these sites and measuring things and getting the GPS, and, that's fun work for me. So
no, absolutely. And eventually, I mean, this leads to, once we have a good grip and good understanding of these things, we can extract energy out of the Earth grid, right? And we can harness energy and produce anti-gravity. I mean, this opens the door to all that science, all this science that was known, I mean, clearly, a long time ago, and this knowledge was lost. And I think it's time for humanity to recover this knowledge now.
It's just interesting. Even when this knowledge was lost, for some reason, we were still building and congregating on these power sites or treating them special. So there you go. It's just amazing. But thank you, Jimmy. We'll plan update 4 as soon as you compile 30 more slides.
Beautiful. I love it. And I'll do what I can to make sure this gets out there.
Well, thanks, Grant, and thank you so much, Nicole. Also, it's such a very generous of you to allow me to use your platform to propagate the message. And let's have more fun next time again.
Beautiful. I'm happy to be part of it. I'm honored to be part of it.
Yeah, me too. So much.
We're here at the verge of a major discovery, and we're part of it. So that's exciting. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you in the chat room too. Thank you. Share, like, and share. Bye.
Bye. Beautiful.